It's estimated that by 2075, Earth's population will be 10 billion. What's your solution for humanity? Story 1. Aren't most developed countries facing a decline in births? To me, it seems that if the countries of poorer nations start getting developed, we won't have a population crisis. Maybe that's naive and hopeful thinking. The population is supposed to stabilize and then start decreasing if every country ends up following the same declining birth rate as countries in Europe, East Asia, and North America have. One problem is that all those nations developed middle classes by exploiting cheap foreign labor, and it's the middle classes who are having less kids. We need to start thinking about a post-cheap labor economy that still creates a middle class, or make poverty as comfortable and as dignified as the middle class, or we'll hit a wall and fall. We have virtually made no plans for what an economy past this one will look like, at least not for anyone in a developed country, and even there, most of the population will still be aimless. Story 2. We don't need any solutions. As nations develop, their birth rates naturally even out. I predict we'll find an equilibrium somewhere, and once the rest of the world catches up technologically, things will stabilize. If I recall, there has been a handful of peer-reviewed studies, one of which done by UNICEF, stating that the current rate of economic and industrial development combined with the fact that populations stabilize, along with that development, then the birth-to-death ratio should even out at about 12 billion. Which, yeah, that's still 4 billion more than we are currently around, but it's not the exponential to the power of infinity growth threat that many people make it out to be. You don't need to kill people, you just need to make society run well. Yeah, but you're assuming that the rest of the world catches up technologically. A lot of third world countries still don't have plumbing in places. Story 3. Overpopulation is not a problem. Unequal distributions of resources are. There is enough food in the world that no one should go hungry, but it isn't distributed quickly or equitably enough to solve hunger. The plan the UN gave Elon Musk to end world hunger centers around this. Surprise, surprise, our methods of food production are extremely unsustainable. You think all the fake meat products are popping up now because the overall population cares more about the well-being of animals? No, the fact is that the production of animal products, to the extent we produce them now, is incredibly wasteful, and with climate change and a growing population, we won't be able to sustain it. And we have those issues because we aren't using our resources wisely. Sadly, our economy works on a for-profit basis that in turn puts the advantage of a minority over the good of everyone, environment included. We could easily get many more humans on this planet and still be sustainable if we'd spend our effort on that goal. There is so much innovation going around, be it in food or for things like growing meat in a lab or replacing traditional agriculture with more sustainable methods and products. We could invest in energy that is hurting our environment a lot less than commonly used ones and work on creating methods that are even cleaner. Instead, we accept that our system of money and concentration of economic strength is dominating what we're doing, leading to issues like unsustainable agriculture to generate more profits and energy production like coal to still be a thing when we could have started to phase those out 40 years ago. If we'd managed to work for a common goal with an eye on sustainability, there would be plenty of ways to feed billions of people and let them live decent lives. But we don't, to an extent that destroying our own environment is the norm rather than the exception, and human greed is so widespread that humanity working together for the better of everyone is nothing more than a utopian sci-fi concept. It's still totally shocking to me that we can store all the world's knowledge in the palm of our hand, but we still can't feed it. Story 4. Change economies so that constant growth isn't needed. Downturns should be expected and considered healthy. Constant growth is unsustainable. There are finite resources on the planet that cannot be exceeded. In addition, change economies to charge for what they actually use. If your product uses up resources that are not renewable, make them more expensive. If it pollutes or destroys environments in its production, fine the production. Make contraceptives and family planning easily accessible. Fund education, generally promote the idea of living within your means and finding happiness as admirable. And hoarding wealth is not only disgusting but actually harmful to the world around you. If you have the means to reduce harm or ease suffering and you don't, your means should be taxed heavily so it can be used to do so. I've thought about this. If you transferred a human's mind into a robot or computer simulation, etc., would they stay human? We have evolved with a very strong mind/body connection. Our mind can affect our body, but our body can also affect our mind. Think think of what an upset stomach does to our mood. Think of all the hormones, adrenaline, dopamine, etc. that we generate and how they affect our minds. Of course, maybe that's just another step in human evolution. The day comes when we're no longer chained to our more basic biological functions. If anyone understands the concepts of rates, it's not that we will stop growing, but it's that we will continue to grow at a more sustainable rate. Since the Industrial Revolution, the world has been growing at an exponential rate, which by default is unsustainable. Nothing can continue to grow exponentially. That's why degrowth is important. All of this would be great if we didn't have half the population actively fighting against it all the time. Story 5. Wait till some other pandemic comes along in the coming years. Literally the definition of natural selection. I don't get how people don't see COVID as a gigantic canary in the coal mine. Natural order is undefeated. We can figure out our population problems or Earth will do it for us. There is no third option. COVID didn't change too much, not even 1/10%. At current estimates, probably massively underreported though, 7 million people died of corona. That's 0.08% of the world population of 8 billion. It's not much of a comparison because things changed after the plague, but that killed 30 to 50% of the population. Stop talking about this, y'all. You'll jinx us. Story 6. And not to worry about it, the global rate of population increase has halved in the last 50 years, 2% to 1%, and the predictions from a couple of years ago have it peaking in around 2070 at 9.4 billion and being down to 9 billion by 2100. But with the US going into anti-abortion, their population decline is increasing. Japan has just found out that half the married under 30 population actively doesn't want kids, and China removed their single baby policy to try and increase their population, but it hasn't made a difference as yet, so I am expecting the next round of predictions to have a lower peak. That's assuming the global warming hasn't killed us all by then. I think it depends on where you are. The country is so big, there are huge differences between regions. Though the family unit there is so bizarre now, when you think about the one-child rule, it meant you'd have your parents and your grandparents, no aunts or uncles, and I don't even think you'd have anyone of a close enough relation to call a cousin, from a Western viewpoint. Yes and no, the US is pretty stable in its internal population with a low increase in the birth rate, but that increase has been declining year on year for the last 30 years, approximately 1.4% in 92. There have been a couple of upticks, but within a few years the growth is lower than was before the uptick. COVID caused a record low of 0.16%, and there has been an uptick from that to the current growth of 0.38%, which is about where it was pre-COVID. Still quite a big drop. The immigration is affected by policies, which change massively with whomever is president. For instance, the net immigration for 2020 to 2021 was 376K versus 2021 to 2022 being 1,010K. The reason I said declining population growth is because if you have a look at the age distribution in the USA over the last decade, you'll notice the population percentage of the 0 to 14 age bracket that has been decreasing. According to the explanation below the graph, it shows an increase in under 15s, so I thought maybe they mean in actual members as opposed to percentage. So checked against the population figures, and the 0 to 14 age bracket decreased by almost 491K. So while it's positive currently, there isn't much of a buffer. Once the plus 65-year-olds start hitting the age ceiling, I expect it'll start bouncing between positive and negative. It makes perfect sense that there will be a run on land, and big cities with major population issues will eventually be fled. Story 7. So your question includes a false premise, that the existence of so many people is a problem to be solved. I think it is our system, our relationship to both the means of production and the biosphere, and a culture built largely on consumption as the root of satisfaction, that is the problem. So my solution involves a paradigm shift in mentality towards resources and economies from exploitive, extractive, and wealthy-centric, not anthropocentric. It's obvious that powers that be don't give a shit about the vast majority of us, to cooperative and biosphere-centric. It sounds hippy-dippy, it's not. There are concrete material steps we can take, but it's also incredibly unlikely. I unfortunately concur. However, I think that a genocide solution will be both as a result of more powerful countries trying to grasp at remaining resources, while simultaneously experiencing a reduction in agricultural capacity from both ecological collapse and agricultural areas, and reduced capacity to produce and distribute petroleum-based pesticides and fertilizer. It's agitating aggravating to be dismissed and labeled as a hippie when it's the most pragmatic and viable option for survival. Apparently, we'd rather die grasping at control and domination than change our definition of success. Die grasping at control and domination rather than change our definition of success is an excellent way to put it, thank you. It is indeed aggravating to be dismissed as a hippie, especially when one is decidedly not a hippie at all. Apparently, any idea that could actually help us makes you a hippie these days. Or a socialist, but that's an entirely different video. Story 8. Create artificial mechanical bodies and create a method to transfer consciousness to them. Oh, I would love this. Or the mechanical me would. Is transferring consciousness even possible? Or would it be more like a clone? Only the organic me has to ask that question. Mech me won't care. I've thought a lot about this. If you transferred a human's mind into a robot or computer simulation, etc., would they stay human? We have evolved with a very strong mind-to-body connection. Our mind can affect our body, but our body can also affect our mind. Think of what an upset stomach does to our mood. Think of all the hormones, adrenaline, dopamine, etc. that we generate and how they affect our minds. Of course, maybe that's just another step in human evolution. The day comes when we're no longer chained to our more basic biological functions. As long as you can finally implant Bluetooth headphones into my ears, I'm good. Story 9. Living under the sea in pineapples. I see what you mean. Who lives in a pineapple under the sea? The human race does. Story 10. It's 100% a question of resource distribution. We can manage 10 billion no problem so long as we're smart about it. Most importantly, limit climate change, which threatens the amount of arable land. Also, people displaced due to their homes being unlivable will put serious strain on global supply chains. Limit meat production in terms of tons of feed into tons of meat out. Cows are something like 8 to 1, horribly inefficient even before accounting for land use, methane, etc. Chickens are better at it, around 3 to 1, and other animals mostly range in between, but the point stands. Not that we all have to go vegetarian, but we should end subsidies for factory farmers and allow meat to become something more of a delicacy. If we're lucky, then lab-grown meat will undercut it in a more sustainable way eventually. Reduce the amount of food thrown away, currently around 1/3 of all food produced, by encouraging local production and consumption where possible. Eventually, global birth rates will follow the same trajectory that many developed countries already are, and we're projected on average to top out at not much more than 10 billion before 2100. Encouraging education in developing countries, especially for women, is the #1 factor that can reduce fertility and help this along. What about the infrastructure of humanity? With that large amount of people on Earth, plenty of elder people will need to be taken care of. Hospitals need workers and doctors, while the living standards are rising, and a lot of people are much more tempted to become influencers and make quick, easy money instead of learning a profession and wanting to become part of the society. But you've got some very valid points there. Yeah, that's why a global one-child policy or something similar won't work. A gentle aging of the population can be managed if we choose to invest in pensions, healthcare, and so on. Automation will help with the labor shortage as well. But limiting births causes a sudden drop in young people, which really causes issues when that generation grows up and has to support their much more numerous parents. It's a balancing act between supporting retired people while also not overburdening the younger ones. We're already having a shortage of workers to take care of the elderly. If we don't continue to invest in these programs, our generation is going to be out on the street. Story 11. Find the Prothean tech on Mars so we can start spreading away from the Earth. Sure, we'll probably piss off the Turians sooner, but that means I will actually get a chance to meet an alien before I die. I'll be 85 in 2075. A few extra years to prepare for the Reapers wouldn't hurt either. Assuming the Council will listen this time, I doubt it, I wouldn't hold your breath. Story 12. Wealth concentration makes everyone poor. Some will decide having children is unaffordable. The ones who do decide to have children will have lower life expectancy as well as higher crime rates, basically killing each other. Invest in highly addictive and deadly narcotics like meth. Don't invest in education. Make living a healthy lifestyle a privilege only wealthy people can afford. Foster a got mine, screw you mentality so no one helps each other. Promote overconsumption of multimedia in order to distract people from what's going on right in front of their faces. Promote urban centers, forcing people to live in unhealthy conditions. Promote polarized politics to make sure the government is deadlocked. Overworking people. Deregulate backbone infrastructure. Oh crap, do I really have to do anything? Just build more. It's not a riddle, there's plenty of empty space. The riddle is getting the billionaires to pay for the accommodations instead of just hoarding dollar signs. It would work out for their benefit too, but they can only see 1 quarter ahead at best. Establish hive cities. All the population outside of hive cities work agriculture. Establish a mechanicum on Mars to handle manufacturing. We need a moon base to act as a jumping-off point for intergalactic travel. Find an immortal psychic human and name him Emperor of Mankind. Invest heavily in FTL travel research. Expand to other galaxies, designating some worlds as agriculture worlds and others as megacities. Mount a crusade against all non-human species we encounter. I'm too exhausted for any of this. Story 13. Allowing all humans to voluntarily and freely choose their own reproductive trajectory by providing 100% unrestricted access to birth control, vasectomies, abortion, and scientific education about these services that will prevent social ills of 2075. Sex education and free birth control to the countries that are experiencing the highest rates of population growth. Free condoms for all. Doctors not questioning or preventing people that want sterilization. Legalize abortion everywhere. Increase funding for education. All of these things for all countries, especially the third world. Insane to think that it could take that long, but it will probably take longer. Story 14. Very general answer, but here's my take. Instead of economies and technology being used to generate profit, we need to collectively return to the idea that an economy exists for the sake of progress. What I mean by that is the concept of economy historically emerges as a tool for organization and distribution of resources. If those resources are not distributed in ways that benefit people from the very bottom of the financial spectrum, then we have lost sight of the point of having an economy. Technology is similar. We have developed an economy to make life easier for people, not necessarily to generate capital. Technology, more straightforwardly, is also developed to make certain activities in life easier. These two things have been skewed towards producing only capital. If we cannot utilize these social and practical tools for the benefit of people, full stop, people, then I'm confident that we won't hit 10 billion because our planet will continue burning in unprecedented ways. If we can, however, then through our use of economies and technologies for benefiting people, we might use these in ecologically cautious ways that harm the planet to a lesser degree, hopefully at some point begin helping our planet to recover. So on the one hand, if we get our shit together, then we might see the population decline for reasons that it does in countries with a more educated population. And on the other hand, if we don't get our shit together, I predict our population will decline for much worse reasons. With all that said, I'm just speculating from the perspective of a millennial who is really into reading philosophy. The world has ways of dealing with overpopulation. We just experienced one of the #1 methods of reducing population. Pandemics will happen more frequently. Severe weather will cause some parts of the world to become unlivable. Fresh water limitations will lead to mass death, and food shortages will lead to famines. Biologists have seen this in every other extended population. Birth rates will decline as conditions for survival worsen. There will be mass casualty events. Welcome to the first annual Hunger Games. In all seriousness, World War III will likely dramatically reduce our population within a few years, so it is unlikely we have much to worry about. I highly doubt we will have 10 billion by 2075. Maybe 1 billion or so. Oh good, I'm not worried now, thanks. Story 15. We need to incentivize not having children, especially in the countries that are experiencing economic disasters, largely because poor people there regularly have 8 or 10 kids. For example, don't give prospective refugees waiting in camps extra bonus points towards being accepted by a developed country if they keep giving birth in the camp. Instead, give preference to those who remain child-free and subtract points for extra kids. Don't give extra tax breaks and income assistance and free handouts to those who keep having kids they can't financially handle themselves. Instead, make a vasectomy or tubal ligation mandatory for any application for income assistance to be accepted from anyone who is a parent. Incentivize voluntary sterilization of prisoners who have committed crimes by offering the option of a reduced sentence. Immigration. It really should be the most obvious solution. While we're talking about global overpopulation, developed countries have been talking about declining birth rates. So far, these countries' solutions have been to remove women's right to choose and clamp down on birth control. Instead, the best solution is right in front of them. If developed countries would just quit their xenophobia and open their borders to people wanting to come over and work, they wouldn't have to resort to draconian practices. Overpopulation in itself is not a crisis. Unstable nations or states, accumulation of more and more wealth on one side and lack of cooperation, supply chain disruptions, politically motivated food and energy crises are. Also, development concentrated in very specific urban and trade centers. We need more affordable, sustainable, and efficient cities that are not necessarily ultra-modern cosmopolitan hotspots, but can provide opportunities to people and are well connected. Clamping down on birth control seems to already be happening in a lot of places, and being met with a lot of resistance. Story 16. Sterilize 90% of males at puberty via vasectomy. Reversible only if qualified by intelligence, temperament, propensity to aggression, and any criminal act perpetrated against another or society by the individual. Criminal acts would require castration. Females would be sterilized, tubes tied, if they display similar traits. If a family member displays criminal traits, sterilize all the family members. Everyone gets to live their lives just fine, but there's no indiscriminate breeding. Since a man can theoretically impregnate multiple women a day, they lose the largest right to reproduce. Those who grow to become quality individuals can choose to have reversal procedures. Result is population reduction, and aggression and general stupidity bred out of the species. Problem solved. Toxic corporate greed and the culture of hate and genocide would be history. Of course, the world would be fucked anyway, but the exit would slow and would theoretically be more peaceful. Harsh? It's how we breed our livestock and pets. Call the aggression and bad temperament. Breed for health and desired qualities. We are just big-brained aggressive chimps. Our species is tainted with insanity. And what happens when, I don't know, we discover we were manipulated into this by an alien species that then proceeds to treat us like we treated our pets? Or we domesticate ourselves into so much pacifism, alien invasion rolls right over us. Who cares? We're useless as is. We are vicious, violent, and crap where we eat. We prey on our own species. We've destroyed our planet. Let them wipe us out. We're obviously done. The bomb has gone off. We're just tasting the shockwave now. We're done as a species and just don't know it yet, because most of us are an ignorant waste of oxygen. Edgelord82 has entered the chat. Story 17. That's 25% more people than now, and it'll peak and start falling after that. We already produce more than enough food for that many people, after accounting for waste, so that's a strong reason to know that we don't need much drastic action to keep feeding people. The big challenges aren't population related. They're things like nitrogen and potassium recycling that we need to do more efficiently. We already know we can do those things. Fertilizer without fossil fuels are already known technology. Recycling waste to recover potassium and avoid needing potash mines is possible. We can power all of that with renewable electricity at a lower cost than we're currently paying for energy. Doomsayers about overpopulation are just people looking for excuses to exterminate groups they don't like. Without fixing overconsumption, even genocide wouldn't save us environmentally. And if we fix overconsumption and waste, that's enough on its own to keep everyone fed and comfortable on the planet. End the war on fossil fuels while continuing to advance alternative power sources. Assist poorer nations in their development, as when civilizations advance to a certain point the population levels out, and in many cases actually declines. The mere presence of 10 billion people isn't an issue. The condition of the nation supporting those 10 billion is a bigger issue. Accessible, secular education for all, and I mean for both genders and in every country. Quality education will lead to higher living standards and lower mortality rates. It also gives women more agency over their bodies, and since most women don't want to be baby factories, this would ultimately reduce birth rates. Education is key, but who will be agreeing on this education and providing it? We have enough arguments about that as is. Story 18. Extraplanetary expansion. It forces science to be a priority, which would have other positive effects on the world. It creates an extra livable area. It increases our knowledge of planetary climate control and balanced enclosed environments. Best of all, we don't have to worry about our species being taken out by a single planetary event anymore. Ask ChatGPT, LOL. Use less space on farming. Go vertical. The Earth can fit so many more people. Literally creating more space will have to be a solution. Entire cities will eventually have to be replanned, not only for climate change but functionality. Story 19. This is frustrating because people will talk about space colonies, genocide, and other crap when we already have all the solutions we need to this problem. Poverty is a massive contributor to high birth rates. We know how to reduce poverty. Focus on getting an education and having a career for all people is a massive contributor to low birth rates. We know how to encourage higher education and a serious career. Overpopulation of the Earth is mainly a problem because of how unsustainably we produce and live. We know exactly what these unsustainable practices are and who the main perpetrators are. We know exactly what to do. It's just something that will hurt the wallets of the most powerful people on Earth, so there's no will to do it. Some examples: 1. Building dense, walkable, and green urban or suburban communities instead of shitty sprawl. 2. Prioritizing public transit, trains, buses, etc., cycling, and personal electric vehicles. 3. Moving to cleaner energy, solar, hydro, and nuclear, etc. 4. Opposing the constant looting and sabotage of developing countries countries by bureaucratic and economic orgs led by developed countries. 5. Much higher restrictions on what companies can and can't do with regards to environmental practices. 6. Heavy wealth redistribution and universal access to higher ed. Anybody talking about space or AI gizmos is fundamentally unserious. Eat the rich. I hear they're good with soy sauce. Story 20. Just spitballing here, not claiming they're all good. 1. Government pays for any voluntary vasectomy or sterilization requested. No fees at all, just people who decide they don't want to get it. If they have remorse later, vasectomies can be reversed. This time charging, or there's adoption. 2. Heard this from Doug Stanhope, but same plan as above, but make it incentive-based. Backstage passes to concerts, get out of speeding ticket-free cards, some minor prizes with proof of sterilization. 3. State-funded birth control and sex education besides just don't. 4. More challenges like the Tide Pod Challenge. It's heartless, but the stupid and peer-pressured weed themselves out. 5. When a predator in the wild kills a human or several, none of this concentrated effort to hunt it down, so they don't develop a taste for humans. If the family of the deceased want to, that's their business. Humans are back on the food chain. 6. Religion dropping sex taboos. Waiting for marriage and one person your whole life is not in and of itself a bad idea, but when someone came up with that, you were married in your teens and died in your 30s, and people still didn't always stick to it. Not to mention, be fruitful and multiply seems less necessary at this point. We've done it, and it shouldn't take a divine decree to tell us that. In its place, teach responsible sex practices. A couple of options. The Purge. Make hunting offending predators legal. Dueling to resolve conflicts. Post propaganda on TikTok saying oxygen is poison and to hold your breath for at least 1 hour. Start colonizing other planets, like Mars, or even the moon. Ocean underwater cities. Create a deadly virus that only affects certain individuals. Wait, this sounds familiar. Keep promoting unhealthy lifestyles in a positive way, such as obesity, drinking, etc. I could probably come up with 100 more. LOL. To quote Space Corps from Portal, "Space, space, gotta go to space, space, space. Hey lady, space." TikTok challenge, Darwin edition, coming soon to save us all. Story 21. Ban plastics, fossil fuels, unsustainable foods like palm oil, etc., and reduce red meat consumption. Limit urban spread, grow more trees. Limit human settlement and expansion to non-forest/non-agricultural areas. Food would be grown in vertical farms with controlled use of fertilizers. Protect existing rainforests. Ban private flights, large SUVs, trucks for non-commercial use. Reduce commercial flights to 50% or less of current capacity. If all or some of these are not taken care of, then Mother Nature will take care of us. Universal free birth control and women emancipation worldwide. The world population will stabilize when women are free. We don't have to live in a Malthusian nightmare. Hormonal birth control use needs to be monitored by doctors because it's extremely risky both physically and psychologically, so hopefully by universal you don't mean without a prescription. There are already pill mills online giving it out like candy without anything resembling informed consent. The patient can't be informed of side effects that haven't yet been documented. HBC is hormone therapy for young, healthy people. Many major pills contain androgen blockers, and healthy people need androgens to function properly. Give out condoms, sure, make those universal, and other barrier methods, and sex ed, but there needs to be less hormone therapy in the world, not more. Banning red meat in America would be like banning speeding at a NASCAR race. Story 22. Legalized euthanasia and abortion everywhere. To be honest, I think there will be mass unrest way before then. The population is pissed off with the rich. They'll go hide in a bunker and there will be global fallout. People will become desperate and do anything to survive. Economy will collapse. The oceans are dying. Fishing levels are at their highest. The soil we grow our crops in is dying, and we have less than 100 grows left in some places. Climate is getting warmer, affects crop and soil, and oceans and safe drinking water. AI is becoming dangerous. We still have over half of the population living in poverty. Tyrants still have power. Disease will hit us like a brick. Natural disasters could have a huge impact. The list goes on. It would be silly to think that we will get to 2075 without any major population changes. I'm not pessimistic, just thinking about the reality of what's coming. Nicholas Kristof used to write a great column each year called Why This Is the Best Year Ever for the New York Times. I suggest finding it and reading it. Basically, the gist is that every year the world gets better and better, and he counts how it improved that year. We notice the bad things much more than the small, persistent victories. For example, the overall breast cancer survival rate was 49% in the mid-1970s. It's currently sitting at 68%. Now, a 0.5% improvement every year will not make the news like something flashy like breast cancer cured, but every year, 15,000 more women survive it than the year before. Or there are more than 1 billion fewer people living below the international poverty line of $2.50 per day today than in 1990. On average, the number declined by 47 million every year, or 130,000 people each day. Every generation thinks something horrible is coming down the path and things used to be good, and remarkably, we have figured it out. Disease hits us like a brick, and within 18 months, we had a really good vaccination option wildly available to much of the world. That's a triumph if there ever was one. 100 years ago, we were only figuring out what a vaccine versus variolation was. AI is likely dangerous, but also enormously helpful. Climate change, yeah, I'm worried, but I also think recognizing the crisis is a huge opportunity to push the world forward in a way that will improve lives. I wish I had a shred of optimism left. Nice point to make, although the big red flag is the climate and the need for food. Our technology can only go so far. We would need lab-grown foods scaled up, saltwater treatment to be industrialized for consumption, mass fishing to stop, all cars to be electric in the next 15 years, the rainforests being logged for minerals and oil. Wood is literally one of the rarest resources in the universe, yet we chop it all down to find some gold and plant some palm olive oil for our products. If the ocean dies, we die with it. It's all linked together. The world is always at war, and humanity doesn't work together to resolve problems. Yeah, we can increase survival rates for cancer, and I love that, but the fact is, the older the population gets, the more food and water is needed for the population to survive. The elderly will rely on the younger population to keep them alive for longer. Care homes will be in the masses, and will need 1,000,000-fold more hospitals to keep the elderly alive. Hard to stay optimistic. Gee, and I was having such a good day. Story 23. Thorium reactors have been estimated to be able to provide energy at around 20 times less the cost than current power and have enough known reserves to power the whole planet for 1,000 years. For all intents and purposes, unlimited energy. That would include being able to power massive desolation plants and support massive amounts of new agriculture, including reclaiming desert and other land for agriculture to support a population much larger than 10 billion and be able to urbanize much more regions with new access to large amounts of fresh water. Also, employ biochar techniques on agricultural waste to sequester carbon and improve soil fertility, including its water holding capacity and crop harvest, which is low-tech and virtually free already to do. Research and improve, then standardize education methods and general education to uplift most of the world to a higher functioning standard. Focus on basic preventative health practices education, such as minimum cardio on a mini trampoline and increasing consumption of potassium to sodium ratio. Vitamin C, vitamin D, thiamine, magnesium, iodine, and glucosamine, which have noticeable reductions to all-cause mortality and improve quality of life, to reduce healthcare burden and costs and improve overall population productivity, continue to spread Christianity and its worldview and uplift the world to Western standards. Smiley face. It was going so well, and then you said to return to the Dark Ages. 100 to 0 so quick. Just do the Thanos snap and kill half the population. It's technically not a genocide if it's so random. How about all of the above? Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a solution that you'd like to propose, please leave it down in the comments below. But please remember to be respectful. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.